And finally, right after Kent tonight, we have a brand new episode of Kent Film Club. Here to give us an idea of what's to come is the show's presenter, Chris Deacy. Chris, thank you for joining us. Before we find out what's to come tonight, what have you been watching recently? Anything good out in the cinema or any old classics you've been returning to?
Oh, it's funny you say that because I saw Fight Club on Sunday evening. Now, it was really funny because it was a film that was so apt for the time when it came out, just before the millennium. I'm not sure it's dated all that well. It's funny, really, because it seemed to represent a certain angst, very masculine angst. I think in the light of Me Too, I think I saw it through a very different sort of lens. It was good to watch it on the big screen with quite a big audience. So I saw it in 1999 and then watched it again 25 years later. Did
you feel any differently about it? Well, I guess you did, yeah, if you think it's not really...
I did. When I first saw it, I saw all these great sort of religious themes in there. I think I saw it through the lens of gender in a way that perhaps at the time I wouldn't have done. But that was really good to see. And I saw a brilliant film with Kate Blanchett playing a very eccentric nun in the Australian outback in the 1940s called The New Boy, about the relationship between Christian mission and Aboriginal origins. And it was a very fascinating culture clash drama. And that was on Monday, and that's showing at the Curzon in Canterbury.
Brilliant. Right, and I've got to talk to you about this. A new film Margot Robbie is set to produce called The Sims, based on, if you didn't guess, the game that we probably all know, the computer game The Sims. What do you make of that? Kind of maybe a similar concept to Barbie with these like fake people that potentially have feelings?
Well, I was thinking this because the third biggest box office hit last year was actually Super Mario Brothers. So sometimes when you have these films that are based on video games, they can work, obviously, for a more family-based audience. So I think, you know, capitalising on the huge success of Barbie last year, then I think it's probably a really good strategic move.
Do you think it will resonate with people like Barbie did? Because Barbie impacted so many people who really resonated with how Barbie felt.
Well, the big irony, of course, last year is that Barbie resonated as much as it did because it had the counterpoint of a completely different film, Oppenheimer, which, of course, went on to win all the big Oscars just a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So I actually think it depends what they put it out with. So what's out around the same kind of time, what sort of choice is offered to viewers?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And how well do films that are typically, say, inspired by games or these things that we've grown up with, how well do they typically seem to do? Because I guess they've got big expectations to meet if people love these games or Barbie, for example. Are they usually any good?
Well, they sometimes have to reboot them, because I remember the two different versions of Lara Croft. The one that came out in 2001, and I've never played that, you know, Tomb Raider. And then they did a much better version about 5 or 6 years ago. So sometimes it can work. Maybe I'm not the right demographic for that, but the fact that Super Mario Brothers did so well in all the formats, you know, including in 4DX, you know, when actually the seats are moving in conjunction with what's going on the screen, then I think it actually is probably going to be a really smart decision on the part of Margot Robbie.
Yeah, and now that we're creeping into spring, I think we're officially in spring now, do you know what sort of other films are going to be out in the cinema that people might want to be watching over the Easter holidays or anything like that?
Well, the new Ghostbusters film comes out tomorrow, so I think that's probably the most exciting one that's on the... Mother's Boys as well. There's quite a lot actually out at the moment, including a range of genres, because I was, you know, looking into this, some of the really big films. You know, horror, actually, there's a lot of horror in the cinema, but the biggest genre is actually action. I mean, comedy does quite well. Animation, not surprisingly, is also really sort of high up there. Thrillers a bit further down the list.
And just quickly, what's coming up on Film Club tonight?
Oh, so we have Jack Parsons, who's a screenwriting student. Some brilliant films. One of them is the original David Lean version of Oliver Twist.
Very exciting. Chris, thanks for talking to us as always.